The Wyoming High School Activities Association recently had its final board meeting for the 2022-23 school year, and some big decisions made. And I'm joined by the Associate Commissioner, Trevor Wilson, who's going to become the acting commissioner on July 1st. Are you getting used to hearing that phrase, actually, acting commissioner, when July
Yeah,
1st rolls around?
I don't know if I'm getting used to it, but it'll sneak up on us fast enough. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a different conversation, but I bring you on for a couple different reasons. First of all, the reclassification talk, since you're going to be kind of heading and spearheading this organization, I got to ask you, what drove the discussion and kind of the decision behind these hard cut lines in enrollment, Trevor?
Yeah, as you know, Dave, it certainly is a change. I've been around this state for 23 years, and we've always had a set number in each class, and this is going away from that. But I think the biggest driving force and the biggest positive that we heard was that this now, if your school goes up or down in enrollment, it doesn't affect somebody else's school. It doesn't move somebody down or somebody up. If you're 700 and above, you're in 4A. And 210 to 699, you're in 3A. That was number one. And then number two is just trying to get you're in the same classification for all sports. It was a lot of confusion. Let's say the Rivertons and Green Rivers and Evanston's at time. You're 4A in one sport, 3A in the other. It was just hard to keep track and hard to sell your community on why that is. So, in the sports that we have two classes or one class, obviously that's just the way it is because of numbers. But everything else, other than football, we did not touch football. Football seems to be working according to our schools, and we didn't touch football. But everything else, it'll be consistent in classification from sport to sport.
So really, you're talking basketball, volleyball, and track and field is basically the three big ones that impacts, because everything else is essentially
Yeah,
almost a two or one class system. I guess you throw wrestling into that mix as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So what was the decision like? I mean, what was the feedback from the different districts that you guys got when putting this all together?
Yeah, I mean, it was very positive, which is kind of strange because every time we start talking reclass, no matter what the proposal is, it always seems like it in the past has just been a negative, negative, and then pretty soon we're back to doing what we do, which is okay. But this thing started about 2 years ago with our reclassification committee, did a good job of using some data to establish those cut lines that you see now based on the last basically 25 years. So that was helpful. And it doesn't, if you think about it, it really doesn't change a lot. I mean, it changed obviously how we're doing things, but as far as the number of schools in each class, it doesn't change a whole lot. But it's been supported, I can't say unanimously, but overwhelmingly supported by our schools.
What is going to be the breakdown in terms of the numbers in classes? Do you know that
Yeah,
off the top of
yeah,
your head?
I do. 700 enrollment and above will be 4A, and currently that's 15 schools.
Right.
210 to 699 will be 3A, currently 16 schools.
Okay.
110 to 209 will be 2A, and that's currently 14 schools. And then 1A will be 109 and below, and that's currently 23 schools. And that's counting Chugwater and Glendo that I'm hearing might be closed. So it's
Well,
very similar.
yeah. So okay. So I got to ask the question, and how does that impact regional tournaments, especially for volleyball, basketball? I think a 4A, you just mentioned 15 teams. We have an odd
Yeah,
balance. And
yeah,
I got to imagine that there's some discussion like, well, how do we put together a regional and who gets the bye? Or
yeah,
how does this work? How do you look at that when you have an
yeah.
odd number of teams, especially in the big school class?
Yeah, it would be a challenge, and that's probably the benefit of having our even numbers that we've had in the past. But we allow our schools now to figure that out. Our board, we establish who's in each classification, and then we allow our schools to figure out how you're coming to state. So our schools have been talking about it. More than likely, with 4A, one seed's probably going to get a bye, depending on how that works. They talked about different regional setups, but for the most part, we just asked that we take the top four from the east, top 4 from the west. You tell us how you're going to do that. We don't care, and we're going to put them in the state tournament.
Yeah. Okay. Any thought of moving stuff, going back north south versus east west? Is there any talk about that right now?
We have not heard that, but that's certainly a possibility. And it might be, you've been around long enough too. We might have 4A might have an east-west structure, and 2A might be deciding that the north-south is better as far as travel and how it works out. So it'll be interesting to see. We have a little bit of time, but we need to have all that finalized before our November scheduling meeting, because that's when we will be using this new structure for the next school year.
Yeah, so next school year set. So this all starts in the 23-24 year? No, 24-25. Okay.
Yep, 24-25, and then of course 25-26 school year will be our next reclass cycle.
Okay. So this is set for 2 years starting in 24-25.
Yes, sir. Yep.
All right. So now that we got reclass kind of down, we got changes coming up in wrestling, approved for a 3-day state wrestling meet. And I'm assuming that's just based upon some of the increased numbers, and particularly on the girls' side, which I know was very exciting to see in the inaugural year.
Yeah, the girls was cool. I mean, it wasn't obviously perfect, but for our first season, it was pretty cool to see. I mean, we had the highest percentage of growth in the nation with our girls wrestling. We went from 35 girls the previous year, 258 this past season. So that's pretty awesome and cool to see. So you got it right, though. We had to make an adjustment with our girls, because we can't just have a 2-day tournament. As you know, it's already packed with the boys. And if we had girls, we just had to do something different. And we felt like we wanted to be as consistent as we can with the boys and the girls season. So there's no issues with, treating one gender better than the other. So the 3-day format came out of our committee. It was approved by our board last week. Basically, each classification will have 2 mats running all the way through the tournament until we get to the championship matches on Saturday, and then we'll be down to 1 mat at that time. But there'll be longer days. But the negative of a 3-day tournament is that each kid now has to, not each kid, but now there's 3 weigh-ins, 3 consecutive weigh-ins, which they probably do not see during the regular season. So that will be a challenge. And at least on Saturday, it will only be those top 6. The placers are the only ones that will be making weight on Saturday. But that's one of the negatives. But I think it'll be a cool setting. I think it'll be great for everybody, and I guess we'll just see how it goes.
And so you're talking boys and girls are gonna go same time, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all the way through. So does that mean less matches per day for some of these wrestlers?
For sure, and that's also a negative. If you get, let's say, day 1, if you get a bye in that first round, you might not even wrestle.
Oh, wow.
Because on day 1, we're going to start at 10 o'clock. And this could change a little bit with the times, but we're going to start at 10 a.m., basically have 1 weigh-ins at 10 a.m., have 1 round at noon, and then a round of wrestlebacks at 5. So if you get a bye, and there's going to be a few, as you know, so you may not wrestle on Thursday, but yeah, you'd have to make weight, which isn't great. And then on Friday, we're going to wrestle through the semis, and then the 3rd round of wrestleback. So everybody will wrestle that day. And then on Saturday, we have the consolation semis, the placers, 3rd and 5th, and then of course championship matches. And also want to mention that one thing the schedule does do is it makes sure that every team can go home Saturday night if they choose. In the past, it's been iffy if Cokeville, Star Valley, Jackson, some of the Evanston could get home because of their school rules that allows them not to travel. But this will allow every school, if they choose, to get home on Saturday night.
Okay. Are we breaking classifications? Obviously, still same 3 for boys, but are we going classifications for girls since it's been so popular?
We still just have 1 classification for girls, and we'll keep, looking at that, and we'll probably get a proposal like we did with outdoor indoor track and field, and maybe some of those to maybe go to 2. But for now, we'll have 1 class of girls, and that reminds me too that we'll have a regional qualifier for each girls or each side now as well. So we'll have a 4A East girls and a 4A West girls, And those girls will all participate at the 3A boys regional wrestling tournament. So the Torrington hosts the 3A East, and Riverton hosts the 3A West. So those regions will also be a boys and a girls regional tournament. And
Okay.
we'll make those 2 days just to avoid any possible 7 matches in a day type thing. And then 2A and 4A will just have their one class of boys only regional tournaments.
So you're going to break the girls away from the boys teams in 2A and 4A just to create one site for those.
Yeah.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
That was actually my next question was about regional wrestling. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
The last big thing I think from last week was your second in command is a guy who's been around this state for a long time. You know him very well. I know him very well in different aspects, but what was the decision and kind of the discussion around bringing Chad Whitworth on as your associate commissioner July 1st?
Yeah, we had some great candidates, and it was a good process, but it was a difficult decision. But we're happy to have Chad on board. He has a lot of respect, a lot of knowledge, background in NFHS network, which he's going to be the lead on. State Spirit, obviously, his wife Whitney will help with that. He has some good intel on that, and then he's also going to be responsible for. We're going to change up our leadership program. The Join the Ride has been awesome, but we're going to change that up a little bit. Still going to have focus on leadership, sportsmanship, citizenship, all this stuff, but we're going to change it up a little bit, rebrand it some, and he'll be responsible for that as well. So I'm looking forward to working with him. He's going to come up for state track and hang out with Ron for a little bit, and then he'll be on board officially June 19th.
Okay.
But he'll also attend some of our mechanics camp. We have a basketball camp June 3rd and 4th, and then a football camp June 15, 16 that he will be a part of as well, just to get to know some people.
Gotcha. All right. Well, sounds like there's been a lot of discussion around the first two big topics we talked about, reclass and wrestling, and then obviously Chad coming on board. So I know it's exciting times. Anything else that we in the media or the fans around the state kind of need to know in terms of discussion right now? I mean, those were some pretty big topics, I guess.
Yeah, I would just say, Dave, if you could do anything to allow some good weather in the next 2 weeks, that would be fantastic. Because this week's been awesome. The first 6 were not so hot.
Yeah, when you go from April 1 to April 27, in my case, between play-by-play softball dates, then yeah, I get it. I totally get it. You gotta have to call Don Day. I'm putting Don on the spot. You're gonna have to call Don and have him pray to the weather gods, I guess. I'm knocking on wood as well.
I will do that. But this week has been awesome. So hopefully it continues.
All right. Trevor, thank you so much for your time on all these topics. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, Dave.